Boss's attack on a poor janitor in front of 500 people is revealed as truly inspiring. The conference room buzzed with anticipation as the high-stakes presentation began. Sam, a 28-year-old janitor working in the shadow of towering Chicago skyscrapers, focused on the mopping stroke of his worn-out mop, hardly caring about the sleek suits brushing past him. But the laughter, the jabs, the disdainful glances, those found him, haunting like ghosts as he polished floors that sparkled brighter than his own aspirations. His single mother's struggle with illness weighed heavy on his heart, while memories of his younger sister's ambitions flickered like fragile lights in his mind. He had their dreams to carry, and yet here he was, the invisible man who cleaned up after the city's elite. In the center of it all stood Tom, the cutthroat CEO with an ego larger than the skyscraper they worked in. That day, Sam felt inexplicably uneasy as his palms grew clammy with anticipation, a deep-seated fear dancing in his chest. Despite his hard work, he was perpetually eclipsed by the executives, whose snide remarks cut deeper than the harshest disinfectant. "Look at that loser," someone sneered, "never reaching for more than a dirty floor." But it was Tom's voice that boomed. "If only we could have someone competent cleaning this place." The room stilled, tensely waiting for the next cue. An unintended slip of a wet mop sent Sam tumbling forward, gasping, the hush around him like a heavy wool blanket. Tom pivoted, eyes sharp, lips curling into a sneer. The humiliation began. "Get it together, you pathetic failure." Each word echoed like a gunshot, freezing him, scorching the present moment into a memory he would never shake. The laughter that followed felt like daggers piercing at his self-worth. What was he doing here? A janitor in a sea of brilliance, now laid bare for everyone to see. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Sam stumbled back to the maintenance closet, heart racing, and darkness enveloped him. Anguish curled up inside, breathing heavily as he sank to the floor. He was overwhelmed by a decisive moment. Was he destined to stay hidden in this world, only considered worthy for cleaning floors? Or was there more underneath the surface? Despite the arrows of doubt, a stubborn flicker ignited. He couldn't be a failure, not when his family relied on him. That night, he sat in the cramped library, a small world filled with faded books that whispered promises of knowledge and ambition. Scores of pages opened avenues in his mind, as words like business and strategy intermingled with the tension of his reality. Mr. Jenkins, the elderly professor, took notice, nudging him to dig deeper into his potential. The weight of his dreams coursed through Sam, and with it came the trepidation of self-revelation. As Tom's decisions began to crumble the company's reputation, Sam felt an electric pull in his gut. Could he dare to expose Tom, the man who had scorned him in front of hundreds? His heart raced, oscillating between fear and determination, the specter of past humiliation at war with a newfound resolve. As he stood in the shadows of corporate power, the clock was ticking, preparing for a fateful presentation that could alter everything. Would he rise from the dust, or spiral back toward the darkness, forever trapped in the rhythm of a mop hitting the floor? The crowd awaited the next move that could change their world forever. Sam could hear the murmurs of disbelief as he slipped back into reality, shaking off the remnants of the past. The library's fluorescent lights flickered, illuminating the paths he must forge. He could no longer afford to exist merely as a janitor, defined by the contemptuous laughter of well-dressed executives. Each character on the pages ahead echoed sentiments of their struggles and triumphs, nudging Sam toward a horizon illuminated with possibilities, only if he dared to seize it. As the weeks passed, Sam's days became saturated with more than the scent of cleaning solutions. He would read a book on leadership during breaks, devouring concepts that had once felt remote and inaccessible. Vision, strategy, execution. The rhythms of his mop were slowly replaced by the quickening beat of his thoughts. He questioned and reassessed, openly contemplating how he had let others define him. With every evening spent transforming his perspective, a vision crystallized. He would rise and confront Tom, but strategically. He began observing the dynamics between Tom and the board members, recognizing the undercurrents of dissatisfaction. The toxic management style was breeding discontent, and whispers of dissent grew louder. Sam smiled to himself, turning up a corner of the yellowed book page dedicated to negotiation. Observing gave him a clearer sense of how leverage worked in any environment: power dynamics, strategy, and communication. Days rolled into nights filled with fervent planning. Sam knew he had knowledge in his corner, and that was something Tom couldn't erase or dismiss. His courage began to manifest itself in meetings and hallway encounters. He made it a point to speak up, offering pragmatic solutions for problems the executives ignored. His voice began to build its own power, catching the ears of those around him. One Tuesday, he found himself standing next to a mid-level manager, Janet, who had always been courteous to him. "You know, I've heard rumblings from top management about Tom's performance," she said, glancing around before lowering her voice. "If you're ever ready to speak up, a lot of us would back you." The affirmation felt electric, fanning the flames of his anxiety into a burgeoning sense of purpose. He wasn't alone. Resentment simmered beneath the surface, ready to boil over. With each daring step forward, anxiety morphed into anticipation as the weeks aligned into a single day, the day of the crucial board meeting. It would be Sam's moment, the inflection point to shift from janitor to disruptor. The stakes were high, and the den of executives was intimidating. Yet, he could feel the energy crackling in his veins, igniting a determination steeped deeper than fear. He found himself pacing in the dim storage closet just before the meeting, rehearsing what he wanted to say. Would they listen? Or would he only feed the flames of contempt already aimed at him? Could he shift his role from invisible to indispensable? The culmination of his plans dangled above him like ripe fruit, tantalizing yet daunting. The moment had arrived. Sam stood at the large oak door, heart thudding against his chest. He took a deep breath, straightened his spine, and with one firm push, he swung the door open. Could an ordinary janitor challenge extraordinary arrogance? Could he turn his weakness into undeniable strength? All eyes turned to him, uncertainty rippling through the room as he took his first step towards his defining moment. The air felt heavy with expectations, some curious, some mocking, but he wouldn't back down. As he began to address the room, a powerful realization washed over him. What he was about to share could shatter their complacency or spark the change he desperately sought. The time had come to face his demons, and all he could do was hope the consequences would catapult him into the realm he'd always yearned for. The silence was deafening as Sam stood there, the weight of 1,000 eyes fixed on him. The confidence he had nurtured over the past weeks felt both exhilarating and terrifying. With every heartbeat, the conviction built within him as he took a slow step forward. He had to own this moment. "Thank you all for gathering today," he began, voice steady despite the storm of thoughts swirling in his mind. "I stand before you not just as your janitor, but as someone who has observed and considered the challenges we face as a company." As he spoke, the faces in the room shifted from skepticism to intrigue. He could almost feel the energy change, a subtle shift in the collective consciousness as everyone adjusted their preconceived notions about him. Deep down, he realized he was armed with a different form of authority, one forged from the relentless pursuit of knowledge and the perspective of an underrepresented voice. "I've come to understand that leadership is not just about making decisions in isolation. It's about listening, collaborating, and cultivating environments where all voices matter," he continued. For too long, we have operated within a corporate bubble where dissent is stifled, where innovation is silenced because of fear. With each word, he recalled the countless hours spent immersing himself in books and strategic conversations with colleagues like Janet. What had once seemed far-fetched was transforming into reality. He could feel a growing momentum, and the courage coursing through him urged him to press forward. Voices within the room began to murmur, some expressing agreement, while others whispered concerns. He seized the moment to pivot, addressing the executives directly. "Tom, your management style may have worked in the past, but it has created divisions instead of uniting us. It's led to inefficiencies, frustrations, and a culture of silence." The air thickened with tension. The executives exchanged uneasy glances. Sam's heart raced, but a quiet determination urged him to stay the course. "We need a fresh approach. It is time for all of us to step outside our comfort zones and embrace collaboration, not competition. We have talented individuals at every level of this company, ready to contribute meaningfully." He took a deep breath, intent on making this a pivotal moment, not just for himself, but for all those hidden in the shadows. "Today, I ask everyone in this room to reconsider how we measure success. Let's foster an environment where initiatives and ideas flourish, rather than one where they are ruthlessly extinguished." Tom shifted in his seat, his expression darkening, but Sam pressed on, fueled by the flicker of hope ignited in the room. "We can't afford to ignore dissent. It is not a threat. It is an opportunity. When we listen, we can innovate. When we embrace change, we empower growth." His voice had risen, echoing against the boardroom walls, gaining strength with every sentence. He could see the faces of his colleagues in the audience, some nodding in fervent agreement. Their affirmation cascaded over him, making him feel less like a janitor and more like a catalyst for change, an unexpected force in a space once reserved for authority. But just as he felt the tide turning, a chilling interruption shattered the budding momentum. Tom stood abruptly, cutting through Sam's fervor. "You've overstepped, Sam. This is not your place. I suggest you stick to your duties. Leave the real decision-making to those qualified to lead," he barked, punctuating his disdain with a dismissive wave. That immediate confrontation crashed over Sam like cold water. Could he really stand his ground against such blatant condescension? Violating the rules of hierarchy was already precarious. Were the whispers of support merely fantasies? Sam's breath hitched for a moment, his nerves threatening to unravel, but he locked his gaze onto Tom's. The fear of returning to invisibility loomed large, but beneath it lay the spark of something vital. A choice. To shrink back or to stand firm and fight for the dignity he and others deserved. The room held its breath, poised on the precipice of change. Could one janitor, one moment, provoke a radical transformation of the very culture that had tried to erase him? As Sam prepared to respond, doubts clashed with core convictions, and he knew this was no ordinary encounter. The outcome of this clash would reshape not just his destiny, but the entire fabric of the company. "Am I not worthy of engagement? Isn't every voice in this company worth acknowledging?" he questioned, feeling the undercurrents of solidarity from those watching. Feeling invigorated yet vulnerable, this was his trial by fire. Would he emerge transformed, or would he be extinguished by the very system he sought to confront? The moment extended, laden with uncertainty as Sam awaited Tom's retort. The collective breath of the room felt like a palpable force, each person grappling with the fallout of his boldness. Tom's eyes narrowed, a predator assessing its prey. Sam resisted the urge to shift his weight, his resolve hardening as he stood his ground. "Let me rephrase that, Sam. You're here to clean the floors, not steer our strategic direction," Tom replied, his tone dripping with condescension. An uncomfortable ripple of tension ran through the audience, and Sam felt a swell of sympathy from his colleagues. At that moment, He realized their perspectives might have shifted from indifference to solidarity, ignited by his willingness to challenge the status quo. What if I told you that I see the way these floors accumulate dirt, the same way the organization allows problems to fester? Each stain tells a story of negligence, Sam countered, surprising himself with the ferocity in his words. Dismissing voices like mine only guarantees that we'll keep repeating those stories of failure. In my experience, every corner needs attention. To his astonishment, murmurs of agreement flared up again, even as Tom's expression darkened further. Rattled but still defiant, Sam pressed on. Are we going to just tolerate a cycle of neglect? It's time we see the connections between us and plan, together. Sam's heart pounded as he felt the weight of their gazes, some supportive, some skeptical, but all were grappling with a palpable sense of awakening. Was it possible that he was bridging a gap, however narrow? The flickers of hope ignited his courage, and his next words came like a thunderclap. Leadership isn't defined by title or position. It's about service. I serve you all when I uphold our collective dignity and potential. The boardroom buzz intensified, the energy transforming into something tangible. Faces leaned in, absorbing his words, a collective yearning for change rising within them. In this battle for their attention, Sam felt the tides shifting, not just for himself, but for everyone longing to be seen. Now, I implore you, let's find solutions together. I'm here not just to clean floors, but to help us clean up the mindset that has held us back, he continued, looking directly at the executives. Instead of segregating ideas based on hierarchy, let's allow every voice a seat at the table. Tom bristled, and tension coalesced around him as he waved a dismissive hand. Enough of this nonsense. You don't know what it's like to carry responsibility for real decision-making. Stick to your job, Sam. But Sam refused to flinch again. What I know is that we all want success, and it won't come from ignoring valuable insights because of outdated boundaries. We've each tasted stagnation, and the question is, do we want to break free? Suddenly, he felt a resurgence of strength. The room began to hum with latent energy, and Sam realized that the anger and frustration brewing beneath Tom's dismissive approach only unveiled the desperate need for transformation. Changing minds was a monumental task, but for the first time, Sam saw the fragility of the old paradigm. The atmosphere electrified as more colleagues began to voice their agreement. Ambassadors of change were rising, emboldened by his bravery. We are capable of leading ourselves, one said, pointing to another's nodding head, as if they'd found their own authority reflected in Sam's boldness. As voices grew louder, Sam knew he was no longer simply a custodian of clean floors. He was stepping into an unexpected role as a custodian of possibility. A new persona was emerging from within, someone who might just challenge the existing power structures. Yet amid the rising chorus of voices clamoring for change, a chilling silence crept back into the room as Tom's face hardened into a mask of wrath. Sam braced himself, knowing that this was just the beginning, the ripple effect only starting. Facing the very executives designed to obstruct him, he felt the weight of what lay ahead. Would Tom attempt to silence this movement in its infancy? Would the impulses of genuine change be snuffed out again? Sam had ignited something that could either burn fiercest or be extinguished in one fell swoop. The stakes had never been higher, and as he stood there, a resolve found its way into him, ready for whatever storm was about to come. The stage was set for the next confrontation. Would he fight this battle or succumb to the shadows once more? The silence in the room felt like an electric charge, crackling with the tension of rising emotions and conflicting loyalties. Tom, caught in the moment of imminent confrontation, held the power of the room like a sledgehammer, ready to strike, but Sam could feel the collective shift leaning in his favor. A pulse quickened, igniting a hesitance in Tom that was almost palpable. "Are you all willing to accept the fantasy that a janitor can lead us?" Tom challenged, his voice thick with contempt, yet laced with an underlying anxiety. Sam sensed it. a flicker of fear from someone who thrived on control. The spectacle had transformed. It was no longer just about him standing against Tom, but a broader commentary on what leadership could truly mean. Sam inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of every eye. His heart raced, not out of fear, but a burgeoning sense of responsibility, almost as if he were stepping into a role he'd never consciously chosen yet desperately craved. "I may be a janitor by title," he began, his voice clear and unwavering, "but I understand what it means to clean. Not just floors, but our approach to issues that persist through neglect." A few heads nodded in agreement, while others wore expressions of cautious revolution. He could see it. People started to grapple with their own identities within the company, dissecting the roles they played, many of which were trapped in the same old patterns that Tom propagated. "I know how it feels to be viewed as less because of a title," he continued, "but I also know that insights come from every corner. The grit we overlook can guide us strategically if we dare to listen. Ignoring this is akin to mopping water off a sinking ship." The murmurs morphed into a rising tide of voices speaking up, emboldened by Sam's fervor. They weren't just backing him. They were rediscovering their own agency, questioning their alignment, and feeling a move toward revolution. Tom's face twisted in irritation, yet even he could not deny the crack forming in his stronghold when he shot back. "This is absurd. You're not one of us. Do you think you truly understand what we face? Do you think we're here to shuffle papers and play politics, Tom?" Sam countered sharply, stepping forward and locking eyes with the board members united in the back. "Leading means being attuned to everyone's contributions, and the prevailing winds of change don't respect your hierarchy. Today, I've chosen to show you the possibility of what can happen when we accept voices from below the glass ceiling." The convictions in his tone didn't just portray anger. They illustrated an evolution, an act of defiance that sought to dismantle fear, wielding an unexpected vulnerability as strength. Sam felt the momentum shift once more, the tide supporting him. Just as he dismissed Tom's intimidation, a flicker of doubt sneaked into his thoughts. Was he truly ready to lead this charge? Could he navigate the intricacies of office politics while remaining grounded in his newfound role? Questions hung in the air like their own unresolved tension. As he stood there, battling against the pressure that had defined so much of his past, he recognized a fundamental truth awakening within himself. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act in its presence. "Let's not underestimate the power of change, Tom," he pressed, sincerity emanating from him. "Don't fear this as an attack. Embrace it as an opportunity. We can shape our future together, if we earnestly choose to unite in our aims." Yet, as the energy in the room surged, an unsettling thought loomed. The back door of the boardroom creaked open, and another figure emerged, unmistakably antagonistic. Sam braced himself, a chilling realization washing over him. This was not merely about convincing Tom anymore. Someone or something even more dangerous was looming to strike at his newfound resolve. As he faced this new threat, the stakes escalated beyond his initial confrontation. Would he find a way to defend his newfound authority, or would the storm of opposition wash away the fragile coalition he had begun to build? The figure stepping through the doorway was oddly familiar. It was Helen, an executive from IT whose calm demeanor had always masked a fierce intelligence. It almost seemed as if she appeared at the worst moment possible, a reality check in the chaotic charge forward. The eyes in the boardroom flicked to her, and Sam felt the shift in energy, a collective anticipation that could switch like a light. She strode in confidently, her gaze locking onto Tom. "What's going on here?" Her voice was smooth but carried the weight of authority. "I thought this meeting was about solutions, not scapegoats." Sam's pulse quickened. Here it was. The turning point. Not just for him, but also for everyone within the room. Would Helen support him, or reveal how far the gulf still lay between them? Separate worlds barely colliding. He studied her, searching for signs as he navigated a mixture of hope and dread. Tom straightened, annoyance barely hidden as he shot a glare at Helen. "We're evaluating unqualified leadership in questionable discussions," he retorted, attempting to regain control. "Is that what you deem as solutions?" "Enough." Her tone turned steely. "This isn't about titles or assumptions. Honestly, this is about who offers real insight. If you don't realize how the world works beyond your comfort zone, then I suggest you reconsider your role." Sam felt a flicker of something he hadn't anticipated. Solidarity. Helen's intervention pulled him into the moment, amplifying everything he had been striving to communicate. She was essentially reaffirming his ideas, challenging the toxic hierarchy and echoing his thoughts about leadership. The air hummed with the potency of her challenge. The tension became palpable when she turned to Sam, her expression softening momentarily. "And you?" She paused, as if choosing to thread carefully. "You need to recognize your own power. You have the capacity to lead on your terms. It's time to make sure the voices of the overlooked aren't lost." Hesitation threaded itself to Sam's determination as he processed her words, feeling both encouraged and unprocessed anxiety knotting in his stomach. What did this mean for the way he had perceived himself? Could he truly step into the role she suggested while devoid of the typical credentials? "Tom," Sam said, turning back to face the well-armed challenger. "What you see as absurdity is a radical shift in forming a real team. Let's engage with this instead of undermining each other. Do you want to operate under fear or resilience? Because I know what I choose." Tom's face flushed, anger warring with the realization that the tides had indeed shifted. For a brief second, it seemed he might respond with a raw vindictiveness before tightening his jaw and swallowing hard. Then the unexpected happened. He laughed, a sharp, sardonic bark that cracked against the tense atmosphere. "You think you've all come to some grand epiphany here? This is nothing more than a romanticized idea of change." A small ripple of discontent faced this denial. Sam discovered it wasn't just him rising against Tom. He had ignited a spark within others, who longed for transformation and vital acknowledgement. Glancing at the board members behind, he recognized their expressions of uncertainty morphing into silent support for the first time. This was evolving into something larger than Tom's defiance, a movement of reclamation from every corner of the room. But Sam's heart raced at the weight of the moment, sensing the delicate balance on the edge of chaos. With Helen beside him, he had strength, yet he knew there was a possibility of retaliation that could crush his resolve instantly. The stakes grew higher, for if Tom lashed back with resentment, it could lead to rapid disillusionment for everyone who had begun to rally around him. As tension enveloped the room like a tightening noose, Sam breathed deep, seeming to draw courage from the gravity of the moment. This was his defining moment. He had to push through or risk losing everything he had clung to so fiercely, including those willing to follow his cause. But just as he opened his mouth, ready to address not just Tom but the entire gathering, the door creaked once more. An unexpected figure stepped inside, someone who could tip the balance entirely in ways Sam had not foreseen. The moment collided with a question that hung unanswerably in the air. Would he and his newfound allies prevail, or would their budding revolution end before it ever truly began? The figure who entered was not just anyone. It was Bill, the company's CEO. His presence filled the room with a palpable weight. Years of experience and decisions pivoting on a dime radiated from him, and Sam felt the surge of adrenaline coursing through his veins, fighting against newfound resolve. Bill's eyes scanned the room, landing on Tom first, then shifting to Sam and Helen. The tension twisted as his expression hardened, the authoritative mask slipping into a more calculating gaze. "What's this?" he asked, voice low but dangerous. "A revolution in my boardroom? I thought we were here to discuss corporate progress, not engage in theatrical performances." The subtle challenge embedded in Bill's words was unmistakable. Sam's heart thudded loudly in his chest. But beneath the panic, He felt a bubbling heat. Defiance. Who was Bill to question their right to progress? "It's not a performance, Bill," Helen countered, stepping forward with the kind of composed bravery that Sam was still searching for. "It's about genuine insight and a shift in our company's culture. We can't keep ignoring the voices that matter." For a second, the room held its collective breath, focusing on Bill's reaction. He regarded Helen with an intensity that felt like a duel, acknowledging her pushback with a moment of respect, even admiration. But Sam saw the quick twitch in Bill's jaw, the tension alive like a coiled spring. "Respect is earned," Bill replied tightly, turning back toward Tom and Sam. "And if you believe that you can just upend decades of established protocol because of a fleeting idea, you're gravely mistaken." Yet among the preternatural focus, Sam sensed something deeper behind Bill's words, a vulnerability masked in authority. Bill's own experiences had forced him into a binary choice, authority or collaboration. Sam could almost see it, the fear of losing control mingling with the desire for innovation. "I wasn't trying to disrupt for the sake of it." Sam found his voice rising, fueled by urgency. "We're not advocating for chaos. We want to foster an environment where every perspective is valued. Fear can no longer dictate our potential." He glanced at Helen, whose supportive smile ignited a fire within him. Innovation thrives on collaboration, not top-down orders. In that moment, Sam became acutely aware of the internal war waging within the room. Bill's hands clenched at his sides, which held the power to not only elevate Sam but also crush him. Sam realized he was at the threshold of something monumental, not just for himself, but for anyone who had felt unheard within the confines of rigid corporate structures. The room began to shift. Bill's narrowed gaze softened, if only slightly, as the board members exchanged glances charged with new energy, a collective reckoning with their own complicit silence. Sam registered subtle nods from a select few, a silent acknowledgement that perhaps he wasn't alone. But just as hope crept in, Bill laughed, a low rumble that sent ripples through the crowd. "Do you think I'll simply allow you to leap into this brave new world on a whim? This isn't just about you, Sam. There are livelihoods at stake." The weight of consequence loomed heavily. Sam suddenly felt the enormity of his challenge not just as a professional endeavor, but as a deeply personal quest for validation. What if he could redirect this power imbalance? "Helen and I aren't here to simply confront you, Bill," Sam pressed, squaring his shoulders, "but to challenge all of us to evolve. We're not disregarding the past. We're advocating for a better future. Are you willing to remain stuck in your past for a temporary comfort?" With the barbs now pointed towards Bill, the tide had officially turned. But Sam could sense the resilience in Bill's demeanor growing sharper, the unpredictability of his next move lurking nearby. Sam needed to prepare, strategizing for a path that could either exalt him or leave him fractured. As the air thickened with tension, Sam understood that this wasn't merely a confrontation. It was the opening gambit in a high-stakes game of chess. Who would make the next move? Would he be ready to embrace the complexity of transformation, or would he falter under the pressure of an opponent unwilling to yield? The weight of Bill's silence settled over the room, daring Sam to escalate. The moment hung, defined by the unspoken challenge in their eyes. Would Sam embrace the complexity of leadership, or would he retreat into the comfortable shadows he long inhabited? The stillness reverberated, and Sam sensed a palpable change in the atmosphere. A collective inhale, a waiting breath, pregnant with unasked questions. Bill, for all his imposing presence, was just a man, and that human frailty fluttered uneasily beneath the surface. "Sam, Helen, I get it," Bill said finally, his voice a touch softer, revealing a hint of vulnerability that he attempted to cloak with authority. "You want to challenge the status quo, but let's not forget who's in charge here." The reminder stung like a slap, igniting a primal urge to retaliate. Yet, Sam understood that anger would only deepen the chasm between them. He needed to carve a bridge, a connection that could transform Bill's resistance into reflection. "What you call status quo, Bill, we call stagnation," Sam replied, steadying his breathing to suppress the rising tide of emotion. "We stand at a critical juncture. Your years of experience can offer guidance, but they cannot suffocate new ideas." In the midst of the battle, a flicker of understanding ignited within Sam. This wasn't just about his fight for validity. It was about inviting others into the dialogue. He thought of the quiet workers, the unsung heroes of the company, whose voices had been drowned out time and again. They deserved a champion, someone they could hold on to in these turbulent waters. "Imagine if we could unite our perspectives, yours grounded in history, and mine filled with fresh innovation," Sam continued, threading his words with careful intent. "Together, we could create a robust framework for our future." Bill mulled over Sam's proposition, his brow furrowing as he weighed the implications. Sam could almost see the internal deliberations taking place. This was a moment where corporate politics and personal instinct collided. Would Bill see potential for collaboration, or would the fear of losing authority override the call for unity? As the silence grew thick, Tom finally broke it. "Look, Bill, we've all felt the growing discontent among our teams. Maybe it's time we take a hard look in the mirror." Sam noticed how the others perked up at Tom's words, fueling a collective realization that their voices held intrinsic value beyond their positions. The stakes were rising, and Sam recognized a burning clarity emerging. This was no longer merely theoretical. It was real, vital, and alive. If they could harness this moment, it could redefine not only their company's trajectory, but also Sam's own understanding of leadership. Each second felt like an eternity, as Bill absorbed the shift within the room. Sam sensed the tide moving, the people glancing at one another, awakening to what could be. His own heart raced with anticipation and fear. Could he really picture a future where disparate voices merged into a harmonized chorus of innovation? "Tell me, Sam," Bill said, the steel in his voice returning. "What's your vision? What choices do you propose when the noise of collaboration becomes deafening?" The loaded question hung in the air, vibrant and demanding. Sam's breath quickened as he realized this was the pivotal moment that could either solidify his position within the company or undo him completely. He needed to respond with clarity and depth, articulating a vision that could resonate beyond the boardroom. "I see a culture where transparency leads our conversations, a regular forum where employees at every level can share thoughts freely. Not just an annual survey, but genuine dialogue, where all contributions lead to curated strategies," Sam articulated, images of a thriving office flashing through his mind. There it was, the vision he'd long held but never vocalized, the heart of the revolution within him finding its voice. "And what if this spirals out of control? What if your so-called dialogue leads to chaos?" Bill retorted, equal parts curiosity and challenge sparking in his eyes. "Then we reevaluate, iterate, and learn," Sam answered, surprising himself with the confidence underlying his statement. "Growth isn't linear, and neither is change. What's important is that we don't retreat into silence out of fear." With tension crackling in the air, Sam could sense that the true battle of wills lay ahead. Bill's resilience might still crush his burgeoning aspirations, but the seeds of possibility had been sown. As they recycled through the intricacies of corporate culture and the unyielding grip of tradition, Sam realized that taking the stand was more than just a professional pursuit. It was about unearthing his own capacity to lead amidst adversity. The stakes were clear, and a challenge flickered defiantly in Bill's eyes, igniting a deeper curiosity within Sam about what lay beyond the immediate struggle. As the exchange continued, his mind raced with new strategies, pondering the potential paths their confrontation could take. The next moves on this chessboard seemed to mold themselves around the tightening tension of their dialogue. "Are you ready for the implications of this new paradigm, Sam?" Bill posed with a smirk, the spark of competition igniting between them. As Sam prepared to articulate his next move, he felt a mix of trepidation and fierce determination swell within him. The moment to define his future had arrived, and he was poised at the cliff's edge, ready to leap, or to stand firm against the tides of tradition and authority. The air remained charged, thick with undisguised anticipation, as Sam prepared to intensify the conversation. This was more than a pitch. It was a moment of awakening, both for him and for those who felt marginalized. Each heartbeat thrummed against the backdrop of Bill's skeptical gaze, and Sam took a step forward, willing to step into the unknown. "Let's think about the people we're serving here, Bill," Sam proposed, leaning forward slightly as if to pull the room closer into his orbit. "What if the real chaos is the silence? Year after year, we've operated under layers of bureaucracy, falling into patterns that stifle creativity and loyalty. People aren't just cogs in a machine. They're human beings with insights that could propel us forward." The sincerity in his voice surprised even Sam, who had often struggled to voice such passion in traditionally stifled corporate environments. As he spoke, he watched Bill's features shift, a slight thawing perhaps, as the other executives wrestled with their own discomfort. Sam could sense a small but growing wave of agreement rippling through the room as coworkers leaned inward, captivated by the potential of this dialogue. What if we implemented smaller teams to address specific challenges? Give every employee a chance to contribute, not just in brainstorming but in the decision-making process. We could operate on feedback cycles that allow us to pivot, rather than remain stagnant. Sam's words sparked an inner dialogue within himself. He was proposing to wind the clock back on decades of rigid decision-making. Was he really ready to take on not just Bill, but the institution built on years of tradition? Yet, deep down, he felt an undeniable push to take ownership of his ideas. Every mention of we solidified a newfound commitment to communal progress. He was no longer just Sam, an individual vying for acceptance. He was the embodiment of change, a role he hadn't recognized before. "But Sam," Helen interjected with genuine curiosity, "what if we falter? What if these voices disrupt the balance we've maintained?" For a fleeting moment, self-doubt bristled just beneath the surface of Sam's confidence. What if their contributions became a cacophony? Where was the boundary between innovation and chaos? "It's a leap of faith," Sam admitted, aware of the weight in his own admission. "But risk aversion has left us stagnant. Growth and disruption often come hand in hand. And if we establish ground rules for dialogue, we don't allow it to veer unnecessarily into disorder." The room murmured. Thoughtful glances exchanged amongst his colleagues. It was as if Sam's earnestness was casting a new light on previously unchallenged norms. But then he felt Bill's imposing aura reassert itself, a fortress of authority determined to fend off the winds of change. "And who decides which voices matter more, Sam? If we start to elevate everyone, wouldn't that lead to more confusion? All those voices competing for attention?" The question landed hard, a block of ice thrown onto the burgeoning flame of his vision. Sam wrestled internally, knowing that facts and figures wouldn't turn tides this time. He had to navigate this storm personally and strategically. "It's a collective decision," he finally responded, grounding himself in a new resolve. "Through transparency, we can establish a framework that holds everyone accountable. We will designate points of contact, facilitators, who can help refine discussions into actionable insights. Everyone wants to feel heard, but also to know their contributions matter." As he spoke, he observed Bill's eyes, the gears turning, processing his arguments. Each point Sam made not only strengthened his position, but also illuminated parts of himself he had long suppressed. His ability to connect ideas, to lead with empathy, and to cultivate unity. But the ultimate challenge loomed on the horizon, facing the inevitable pushback from Bill and those entrenched in tradition. "Are you prepared for the fallout, Sam?" Bill's voice dripped skepticism yet held a thread of intrigue. "To redefine how we operate, it's disruptive, and people will resist." A surge of determination coursed through Sam as he realized the enormity of his impending decision. This wasn't merely a questioning of methods. It was a challenge of identity. "I'm ready to support my team through that fallout," he declared, surprise igniting in his own chest. "I will champion their voices, help them navigate the uncertainty. This is about more than processes. It's about their potential." The room hung in a breath, trapped in a space where anticipation met trepidation. Sam stood his ground, fortified by a belief that had blossomed amidst the pressure. This moment of truth was far more than a corporate gamble. It was his once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to step away from the shadows and embrace true leadership. But just as a flicker of satisfaction began to rise within him, an unsettling thought struck Sam. Would he have the courage to stand firm if the tides turned violently against him? As Bill's expression remained inscrutable, Sam waited, feeling his very fate weaving itself into the fabric of this pivotal confrontation, poised to either shatter or coalesce under the weight of expectation. As the tension hung in the air, Sam felt the eyes of the room shift once more, not just at him, but around him. Here was a moment where ambition collided with authority, and he stood at ground zero. Bill's cold, calculating gaze threatened to snuff out the budding revolution. Yet within that challenge thrived an unexpected ally, the shared conviction sparking new energy among his colleagues. Bill inhaled sharply, perhaps contemplating the implications of Sam's resolute stance. "You believe in this superficial notion of kindness and collaboration?" he replied, incredulous yet intrigued. "What's next? A group hug?" "No, Bill," Sam countered cleanly, suppressing the urge to roll his eyes. "This isn't a matter of rewriting the company's mission as some kind of self-help book. It's about incorporating ideas from every level. It's about driving innovation through the collective intelligence we have yet to provide space for." For the first time, Bill seemed taken aback. The room hummed with life, a flicker of hope igniting in the form of nods passing among fellow employees. It was a massive shift of momentum, and it rippled through the room like a pulse. "Let me propose," Sam continued, finding a steady rhythm in his voice. "Let's pilot a project that involves diverse teams addressing specific challenges within the company. A quarter-long initiative where everyone can apply their knowledge and share unique insights. Real input, real change. Let's measure the impact on productivity, engagement, and ultimately, profitability." As he laid out his vision, Sam realized this proposal was not an end, but rather a step toward reconstruction. Not merely a janitor's plea for recognition, but the birth of a systematic change. Uncertainty remained, but now there was also possibility. People around him leaned in, engaged, and he sensed the gradual shift from skepticism to encouragement. "Helen, what do you think?" He turned, inviting her into the fold. "You're a part of these executive decisions, and you know the strategies that make sense." She nodded thoughtfully, her eyes reflecting recognition of the path they could forge together. Bill's eyes narrowed. The glimmer of tolerance had given way to blatant defiance. "You think any of them will follow you, Sam?" he thudded back, his contempt clear. "Do you expect your fellow employees to support a janitor's vision over their own superiors?" The room collectively shifted and murmured, caught in that delicate moment of frayed tradition against emerging momentum. Sam felt something stir within him. Could it be pride, courage, or merely the fierce flames of determination? "They already are," Sam exclaimed, finding strength in the sound of his own voice. "I didn't ask them to follow me because of my job. I asked them to believe in the value of their own voices, because we all stand to gain. And you know what? They deserve to feel that weight is shared, that decisions reflect our collective wisdom." An undeniable force began to gather at his words. Colleagues exchanging glances that spoke volumes. They began to see him not only as an employee, but as a leader. Energy bubbled around him as a ripple of agreement surged through the ranks. "Bill, this isn't just about what I think or what you think. Sam pressed on, feeling the pulse of courage surge within him. It's about what we, as a company, can achieve. Let's dismantle the walls of arrogance that have limited us for too long. This is the moment to choose, to shift our trajectory, for collaboration, for future potential. Sam's heart pounded, realization dawning brightly in his chest. He was not just fighting for a position, not merely seeking validation. He was advocating for a path forward, the chance to reshape everything he had been forced to endure so far. The silence hung as a choice emerged in every glance. Would they continue to let fear dictate their reality, or embrace the possibility of change? Together, Sam concluded, his voice steady and unwavering, we can redefine what leadership looks like. Let's unite around this fresh vision that prioritizes collective prosperity over individual accolades. No longer blinded by hierarchy, let's build a legacy together. Finally, Sam caught a glimpse of what might constitute success. Not just recognition or accolades, but genuine respect forged through shared trust. He felt the shift, as if the entire room inhaled and exhaled as one synchronized breath. At that moment, they became more than just colleagues. They began to embrace an emerging collective identity, wrestling free from the constraints of outdated paradigms. The tension that had ruled the room began to crack, allowing vulnerability to slip through the seams. Bill's demeanor softened ever so slightly, an acknowledgement not merely of Sam's standing, but perhaps of his own inner discord. Bill began. But before he could finish, there was a soft rustling from the back of the room. It was Janet, the mid-level manager whose whispered support had sparked a flame within Sam's journey. If I might add, she spoke hesitantly but firmly, we're all here because we want the company to thrive. We all want our efforts to be valued. If this is where we find our strength, then I want to be part of that. With that, she stepped forward, inviting the others to follow. Voices began to rise one by one, adding to Janet's. Each colleague shared an insight, an idea, and a realization that this movement for transformation began the moment someone chose to stand up against pressure. Sam couldn't help but smile. The gathering caught fire, and he felt the collective heartbeat that pulsed with hope for change. As discussions flourished around the room, even Bill appeared thoughtful, contemplating their newfound unity. Sam recognized then the profound change. He felt both the weight of responsibility and the exhilaration of leadership. He had transcended his title, solidifying a place of significance among the ranks. In the end, it wasn't merely about defeating Tom or confronting Bill. It was about redefining the very essence of their workplace. Now, Sam stood transformed, not as the invisible janitor in a sea of suits, but as a symbol of movement, awakening change among even the highest tiers of leadership. His vision had ignited a fire that propelled everyone forward, one never-before-seen path stretching out for all of them. As the atmosphere shifted into a place of solidarity and renewed purpose, Sam felt the pride swell within him. He had not only conquered his inner doubts, he had established his position and welcomed others into the conversation. This was personal achievement. This was transformational victory, one that broke down barriers and offered a way for every voice to be heard. And in that moment, under the flickering fluorescent lights of the conference room, Sam became more than a custodian. He became a leader. Now is the time to embrace your own journey of transformation. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and bolster stories of personal overcoming. Comment your reactions and theories about this incredible conclusion. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see and embrace the power of change. You need to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.